Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. We're pleased to have you with us for this informational webinar on Emissions Reduction Alberta's Methane Reduction Deployment Program, or MRDP for short. At ERA, we recognize the importance of reconciliation through respectful relationship and meaningful engagement in the work we do. So before we begin, let's pause for a moment to acknowledge the traditional lands on which we have the privilege of living, learning, and working, as well as the people and communities who have cared for and continue to care for these lands. My name is Melanie, and I'm the Program Delivery Analyst at ERA. I've been working closely on the MRDP with our team since the beginning, and I'll be presenting on behalf of my colleague Miki today. I'm pleased to be joined by someone who's been deeply involved in engaging with industry and has been incrementally valuable to the success we see today. You probably know him already. Blake Wickland, thanks for being here with us today. To help set the stage for today's discussion, here's a quick overview of what we'll be covering. To start, we're excited to welcome a special guest today, a participant in the program who has generously agreed to share experience. I think you'll find her perspective particularly valuable as she briefly shares her journey through the program. From there, we'll provide an exciting update on the program, including the current uptake, some recent changes that have been made since the program launched. And we'll then revisit the program's eligibility requirements and highlight key considerations for proponents that should keep in mind when developing and submitting an application. We'll also take a few minutes to highlight the funding opportunities available through NGIF Accelerator. Their program complements ERAs by supporting methane reduction demonstration projects, helping bridge the gap between innovation and a broader technology deployment. Finally, we'll wrap up with a live Q&A session to address your questions. Without further ado, I am pleased to introduce our special guest speaker today, Sarah Lojczyc. Sarah is a facilities and emission engineer with Saturn Oil and Gas, where she specializes in emissions management and methane reduction across upstream operations. Through her work, she's been directly involved in identifying and implementing practical solutions to reduce methane emissions in the field. Sarah, thank you again for being with us today. The stage is yours.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Melanie, for the introduction, and to Blake and the Emission Reduction Alberta for the opportunity to share a few comments on Saturn Oil and Gas's experience developing a project in the Methane Reduction Deployment Program. For context, Saturn is a light oil producer operating in Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba. We produced over 43,000 barrels of oil per day in the first quarter of 2026. And the timestamp is necessary. Saturn has ranked as Canada's fastest growing oil and gas company for 3 consecutive years. We've grown significantly through accretive and complementary acquisitions of low decline assets, and that means we are often looking at existing infrastructure and finding ways to optimize, asking ourselves how to best keep the assets operating reliably while reducing costs, improving efficiency, and reducing emissions. The project that Saturn brought forward under the Methane Reduction Deployment Program was a practical example of that. Saturn had an older engine that needed work, and the decision our operations team worked through was whether to replace in kind, repair in place, or invest. Invest in a modern engine with better efficiency, lower fuel consumption, and reduced methane slip. And as you'll see later in the webinar, that fits one of the project options under the MRDP. And the MRDP support helped shift the project economics, allowing the lower emission option to move forward in that decision process. When I attended an MRDP webinar, I heard the program described as simple to apply for with prompt feedback. And that was exactly what Saturn needed. So we really put it to the test. In Saturn's case, we went from application first submitted to a signed funding agreement in just 3 weeks. The photo shown here is of the modern engine during installation this spring. Overall, our experience thus far has been very positive, and my insight to share with other producers, especially junior producers like Saturn, is that this program is approachable. The application was straightforward, the information requirements through the program guides are clear, and the administration team is quick and supportive. For us, the MRDP team has continued to be supportive and responsive as we've moved through the procurement and construction phases as well. It doesn't stop after, you're not left out hanging. So our project, it made sense technically, and the funding helped the economics work. From a junior operator's perspective, this program and the way that it's administered, being clear, fast, practical, it hits all the marks that matter because funding programs are most useful when they support a project's momentum rather than slowing it down. Saturn is agile. We're a fast-moving company, and the MRDP matched our pace. So thank you to the Methane Reduction Deployment Program and Emission Reduction Alberta for the support to Saturn's project. Our methane slip reduction project is well underway through construction, and I really appreciate the opportunity to speak about it today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for sharing your experience. And I would like to take a quick moment to also send a shout out at our team, our support team at Modern West Advisory, really helpful with the implementation of this program. So I hope hearing directly from companies that are in the program provides valuable insights that go beyond what we can cover from a program administration perspective. We've designed this program to help Alberta-based owners and operators from upstream and midstream oil and gas facilities deploy proven technologies that detect, reduce, and quantify methane emissions with the goal to reduce these emissions and improve efficiency and prepare operations for future regulatory requirements. ERA is always working in the background on continuous improvement, and we are excited to share today that we have secured an additional 19.4 million from the Environment and Climate Change Canada's Low Carbon Economy Leadership, or LCELF Fund, to support our program. This adds to the 22.4 million from Alberta's Tier Fund we announced last fall. On the picture, we see the Honorable Grant Hunter, Alberta's Minister of Environment and Protected Areas, who made the official announcement at Global Energy Show early this month. Our team was also present to celebrate this milestone and the success of the program to date. Speaking of success, we've committed so far 5.4 million in funding to 10 projects, representing nearly 12 million in total project value. These projects are being led by Alberta-based energy companies, with 78% of participants being small and medium-sized enterprises like Saturn Oil Gas. 7 of these projects focus on reducing methane slip, while the remaining projects target emissions reduction through pneumatic equipment upgrades or replacements. Now, for some exciting news, thanks to the additional support from the Government of Canada, the MRDP has grown significantly. The program now totals 41.8 million and will remain open until March 31st, 2029, or until all available funding has been allocated. The additional investment allows us to support more projects, help more companies deploy proven methane reduction technologies, and continue building on the strong momentum we've already seen across the province. With this expanded funding comes a few important program enhancements designed to maximize impact while ensuring funding is distributed across a broad range of participant and technology pathways. The program will continue to fund up to 50% of your eligible project cost, and we're pleased to announce that the parent company funding cap has increased from $1 to $2 million. This change creates additional opportunities for companies looking to deploy multiple projects or scale their methane reduction efforts. At the same time, we've introduced a $1 million funding cap per eligible technology category that we will see later on. This approach helps ensure the program supports a diverse portfolio of methane reduction solutions rather than concentrating funding in a single technology area, because there's more ways to reduce methane than methane slip. Additionally, as the methane slip reduction technologies have been particularly popular, accounting for the majority of the project funding to date, or approved to date, I should say, we established a dedicated funding allocation, so up to $15 million for methane slip category. Where funding requests exceed available program allocation or category caps, ERA may either prioritize projects with the lowest abatement cost or prorate funding amounts to remain within the program limits. And additionally, as a general guideline, project with an abatement cost above $500 per ton of CO2 reduced. This is calculated using the ERA funding request divided by the lifetime emissions reductions. Those projects may be asked to demonstrate how they can contribute to Canada's goal of achieving net zero emissions by 2050. Finally, the minimum funding request remains $25,000. And this threshold helps ensure both program funding and administration resources are used as efficiently as possible. With that overview behind us, I'll hand it over to Blake, who will take us through an example of how these changes may apply in practice, review eligibility requirements, and share a few additional tips and resources for your prospective applicants. Blake, over to you.
Thanks, Melanie. The updated program incentive structure increases the overall parent company funding cap from $1 million to $2 million. We're very proud that we were able to do that and very thankful for the additional funding. We've also introduced the $1 million cap per eligible technology category. And as Melanie said, that's to ensure that we have a diverse portfolio of projects. Funding remains available for up to 50% of eligible project costs, subject to both caps, of course. In the example scenario you see on this slide, we can see that under the updated funding structure, the total approved funding is $2 million, reflecting the $2 million parent company and $1 million per technology caps. Just a note that ERA will enforce the funding caps by either funding only the project with the lowest abatement cost as calculated by the funding requested over the lifetime CO2E if applicable, or prorating the funding amount to remain within the applicable funding caps. Anyone involved in the MRDP should be aware of program guidelines and terms and conditions. Please refer to the documents available on the program's website and also on the portal. To be eligible, facilities must be legally operating in Alberta, must not be regulated under tier unless part of an aggregated facility, and must meet all program eligibility requirements. To be eligible, projects must be applied for by an upstream or midstream company legally authorized to conduct business in Alberta, be it a site which is either not regulated by tier or is part of an aggregated facility as defined within tier, have started on or after January 1 of 2025, consist of locations within the same economic region of Alberta and of the same eligible technology category, and be completed on or before the defined project completion date, which is 2 years from the approved application and no later than March 31st of 2029. Now we're going to take a look at the eligible technologies for the program. As a whole, the eligible technologies for the program are commercially available and reduce methane emissions and have to be TRL 8+. There are currently no specific funding amounts tied to specific technology types. However, we may need to apply incentive caps to specific technology types to ensure a broad range of technology uptake if necessary. And Melanie did previously speak about the methane slip cap as well. Projects can be aggregated at multiple locations within the same economic region using multiple subcategory, as long as they fall under the same technology type category. An example of this would be aggregating multiple locations around the Edson area, where you would be installing electric instrumentation, instrument air, and electric pumps, as they all fall under technology type C. We did receive a question during registration which asked which technologies qualify under the program, as well as the quantification and qualification criteria. This slide and the next two will provide the most up-to-date list of eligible technologies and show how the program evaluates technologies that are not listed here, including some examples of the criteria used. Now let's go through the categories of the eligible technologies. Type A, we have methane slip from engine operations. This is really focused on the reduction of unburned methane in natural gas engines and can be achieved in many ways, including the optimization of the engine, rebuilding, retrofitting, or treating the exhaust. We do realize that this is not a regulated emission. However, it is recognized that it is a problem. It is a problem emission and something that we really do need to tackle. So the program does allow for these conversions to happen. Type B is routine venting from tanks and compression. This category has two main focus areas, destruction and conservation. Think of it as if you are simply destroying the methane, or if you will be doing some work such as supplementing fuel to a piece of equipment. Type C is pneumatics. This is electrification of instruments or pumps, instrument air, nitrogen conversions, vent gas capture for destruction or conservation, complete removal of bleeding devices, hydraulic, electrohydraulic, gas under oil conversion. They all fit in this category. Type D, surface casing vent flow. This is downhole solutions less than 300 cubic meters per day, and capture solutions also fit in this category. Casing gas capture is just simply casing gas capture for destruction or conservation. Type F are digital solutions. This is one that I'm quite excited to see what comes through. Things like advanced process control, optimization, use of machine learning, and AI to reduce methane emissions. We haven't seen anything in this category yet. However, we're having some very good conversations about what could fit. Type G, this is our other category, and really this is for the rest of the technologies that might not fit into other categories, but do reduce methane emissions. High slippage from catalytic heaters, heater optimization, electricity generation from captured gas, solution gas management, they all fit in this category. There's also a new eligible technology application form available if your project or technology is commercially available, ready for deployment, but doesn't appear in the categories that we just went through. On to some of the eligible costs. The eligible costs within the program can be found in detail on the program website in the project cost guide. Costs must be incurred no earlier than November 12th of 2025, no later than March 31st, 2029. The costs can include front-end engineering and design, which can include items such as process engineering, instrumentation design, electrical engineering, 3D modeling, CAD work, among others. This cannot exceed 10% of the total project costs. Participant internal expenses such as administration, project management, and other overhead costs are eligible, however, cannot exceed 15% of the total project costs. Project equipment, which refers to the eligible technology being installed. Construction equipment, such as rental equipment, heavy lifting, excavation equipment, transportation, and other equipment required for the project-related tasks. Construction labor, which we define as third-party expenses related to human effort and skills to complete tasks within the scope of this project. This can include engineering costs, transportation, construction, installation costs. repair or refurbishment of engines or VRUs for use in a project as a new install as well. Costs that are not eligible for funding include repair or refurbishment of existing equipment or used equipment, with the exception of VRUs and engines, as I stated previously. Work to modify the facility outside of what is required for the project, aesthetic improvements of the facility, operation, maintenance, or upkeep of the equipment, regulatory approvals, post-project verification or commissioning, security, IP protection, internal labor or installation costs incurred by the participant are not eligible. Land acquisition or leasing, buildings and other facilities, equipment leasing not directly tied to project construction, real estate fees and related costs, financing charges, legal fees, interest on loans, including costs related to easements such as easement surveys, and a few others can be found in the project cost guide. The easiest thing to do is refer to the project cost guide for all of the official project cost guidelines. So if you have a technology that does not fit under any of these categories and is TRL 8+, don't worry, it can still be considered. We do have a new eligible technology application you can use. The application walks you through the eligibility criteria and what supporting information is needed. If everything checks out, the technology gets added to our eligible technologies list. Keep in mind that all eligible technologies must reduce methane emissions to qualify. That's the first toll gate to get into the program, is you must reduce methane emissions. If you are a technology provider and are unsure if your technology would be eligible, please reach out with some details on the type of project you're considering, and we can review and discuss eligibility. I'm always happy to have a conversation about technology. In practice, the technology provider would register as a contractor, and their deployment partner, an eligible upstream or midstream operator, registers as the participant to receive funding for installing the eligible technology once it's approved. For questions regarding eligible project types or the submission of eligible technology applications, please contact support@mrp-deployment.ca. Technologies seeking support at earlier stages of development, including pilot or demonstration scale projects, are encouraged to explore other funding opportunities, such as the NGIF's demonstration stream. The Methane Reduction Program is a collaborative initiative between ERA and NGIF. And if you have a technology that still doesn't fit too early in TRL, we highly recommend checking into the other MRDP. This is the demonstration program ran by our friends at NGIF. The program focus is to accelerate and de-risk the commercialization of near commercial methane technologies through pilot testing, demonstrations, and first commercial deployments. They have a program timeline of 3 years, which has 3 fixed intake cohorts. Cohort 1 is currently underway. Deadline for cohort 2 will be the 29th of September 2026, and cohort 3 will be May of 2027. For program funding, SME and startups are eligible to apply for up to $750,000 in funding, or up to 75% of the project costs, whichever is the lower amount. NGIF will also pair proponents up with an industrial partner or demo host for pilot testing. That's one of the big differences in between our programs, is that they will pair technology up with somebody to use it. Provided there's a solution that has capability to mitigate, reduce methane, or measure and quantify methane, there's a pathway for the technology developer through this program. As a note, all 7 types that the deployment program is targeting are eligible in this program as well. The eligibility, TRL 6 to 9. TRL 6 will only be accepted if they have an accelerated pathway to commercialization. The proponent would also have to be an SME or a startup. Startups and SMEs can be based anywhere in the world. Each approved project should be no more than 18 months in timeline and should have a demonstration piece in the project scope. NGIF will pair proponents up with an industrial demonstration site in Alberta. And the market focus is upstream oil and gas, upstream, midstream, and downstream natural gas. So we've told you what's eligible in the program, but really what's out of scope. We've made every effort possible to include as many different sources and technologies as we could, while still maintaining the highest level of integrity and achieving the best possible methane reduction results. Essentially, the program is built to go above and beyond any regulations and reduce or eliminate active methane venting. Technology or projects that would bring a site that is out of compliance simply into compliance are not eligible. With that being said, we have excluded methane slip from flaring, which includes incomplete combustion, unlit, and intermittent flares. Captured gas flaring to an existing flare or the addition of any new flare stacks is also not eligible. Due to regulatory requirements, the replacement of compressor seals has been deemed out of scope, along with measurement, monitoring, and mitigation technologies that only detect or monitor without physically contributing to an emission reduction. Spills, ruptures, desanders, and LDAR work is also excluded. While the participants are the organizations applying for funding from the program, eligible contractors, also known as technology vendors or service providers, are absolutely essential to the execution and success of the projects. Think of eligible contractors, as any company other than the participant that will be providing work within the project. So even if you don't consider yourself a contractor, within the scope of this project, you are a contractor. Service providers such as electric and instrumentation, as well as mechanical companies, heavy lifting, civil works, technology providers or distributors, engineering firms, are all eligible contractors within the program and will be selected as partners during the participants' application process. To become an eligible contractor, simply register in the portal and in the process, review the contractor code of conduct as well as the program terms and conditions. You will then show up on a list where your organization can be selected by participants. During this registration process, you're also able to provide contact information for your company if you would like it to be available to participants who may be looking through the directory for contractor partners. Though you are not required to provide any documentation during this process, you will be required to attest to the fact that the documents such as your Alberta business license, WCB clearance letter, insurance coverage, and an active GST number are available and will be provided upon request. Please note there will be an active audit process. So most or all eligible contractors within the program will receive this request at some point during the program. So please ensure you review the T's and C's to ensure that your organization has all of the necessary documentation. Our participant journey is designed to be as simple as possible while ensuring applications are of the highest quality. Beginning with registering as a user in the portal and followed by registering the participant company, you should find the process very straightforward. Once prepared, you will submit a pre-application that simply contains some eligibility questions. Upon submittal, you should receive an approval in a very short period of time. You can now move on to submitting the full project application. This is where you will fill out all of the required documentation in full and submit through the portal. You may also invite eligible contractors to join in this process and help you on the documentation. Upon submittal, you will receive either an approval notice or a request for information within 5 business days. If approved, you will proceed with the signing of the participant agreement letter and the terms and conditions. You now have an approved project and reserved funding. Next comes the procurement process, where you will submit the procurement documentation once the equipment is purchased and received. Once approved, you will receive the first incentive payment of up to 50% of your approved incentive. Once the equipment's installed and operating, you will submit the completion documentation, may have a request for an in-person or virtual site visit, followed by an approval and the remaining incentive payment. I'll toss it back to Melanie for some frequently asked questions.
Thank you, Blake. Lots of information. So before we get into our live Q&A session, we just wanted to highlight that we will update our FAQ on our program website with the most relevant questions we've received today. On this slide, we are addressing some of the most questions we have received so far, such as a common question is whether projects need to go beyond the legal requirements to qualify. The simple answer is yes. Projects must result in methane emission reduction, and we will repeat this many times, that go beyond current regulatory requirements. Activities undertaken solely to meet compliance obligations are not eligible for funding. If a project includes both compliance-driven activities and additional voluntary emission reduction, incentive may be prorated. These projects are reviewed then on a case-by-case basis. Second, you may wonder what happens if your project does not end up reducing methane emissions. Well, projects that do not reduce emissions may be subject to corrective measures, including withdrawal from the program or repayment of funding. Third, we are often asked about stacking limits within the program. So participants may stack funding from other programs. However, the total funding received cannot exceed 100% of your total eligible project cost. And participants are also required to disclose any other funding sources as early as possible during our application process. It is now time for us to address the questions you are submitting through the question panel. Blake and I are here to answer your questions, so let's dive right in. I'll start by addressing the maximum incentive budget for specific technology types. As mentioned earlier, the technology cap is 1 million per eligible category, and a parent company can get up to $2 million. Since we've seen the most uptake in methane slip projects and to ensure broad uptake over different technology types, we have proactively limited this amount of funding available for the specific category to $15 million out of this whole budget fund, program budget. So far, the incentive reserved for approved projects, we still have $10 million available or about for the methane slip category. And depending on their available budget, ERA may revisit this maximum funding amount in the future. Now, question for you, Blake. How long does the process take to become an approved contractor?
The sign-up process to be an eligible contractor is really 5 or 10 minutes at the very most. Basically, you go in, register a user in the portal, and then you would pick the register and eligible contractor. You put in some information about your company and get approved. Probably the biggest problem that we've had thus far is eligible contractors trying to register as participants within the program. So just please ensure that you pick the correct button when you are when you're submitting that information.
Yes, thanks, Blake. So basically, everyone register as a user and then can choose to be a participant or a contractor. Other question for you, Blake. Can you tell us if contractors can then get visibility on other contractors to assemble some comprehensive solutions?
Yeah, this should be done from the participant side of things within the scope of this project, is really they're the ones putting together that fulsome application. With that being said, organizations such as MELA are a good place for service and technology providers to collaborate and form some of those partnerships.
Thanks, Blake. Yes, and if I may add to your answer, once registered in the portal, contractors can also connect with other contractors who have chosen to make their contact information available through the directory section of the portal. Moving on, what if your technology does not align with the eligible technology listed? So we've touched on this earlier in the webinar. If that's so, you still have an option to submit an application either by selecting the other category or fill out the new eligible technology application for review. Don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions. Seeing our next question, Blake, who is responsible for the application and document submissions?
Project applications have to be submitted by the participant, which means the facilities owner or operator that will receive the funding. And they are also responsible for initiating and submitting the application. However, during the application process, participants may identify one or more eligible contractors they're working with, and they can invite them in to collaborate on the application at any time. So this does allow the eligible contractors to help submit the supporting information for the project, while the participant has to be the one signing off.
Great. So our portal is really a collaboration platform. Building on the last question, somebody wants to know if it's possible to include multiple technologies in one application. Really a common question we received as well. So for clarity, a separate application must be submitted for each parent technology types or category type. But you can submit one application for multiple technologies under the same technology type. For example, if you submit one application that includes both pneumatic electrification and a pneumatic device vent gas capture, as both technologies are under the same parent technology or category of pneumatics. On the other hand, if you have a storage tank vapor recovery project, for example, and an advanced process control and optimization, you will need to submit two applications. The projects have different category of technologies. Please note that multiple sites may be included in one application only if the parent technology type is being installed at each site and all sites fall within the same economic region in Alberta. Again, feel free to contact us and we'll guide you to the best of our abilities when you apply. Moving on now, Blake, how can a participant or an eligible contractor draft a proposal that will be successful when compared to other?
Yeah, just really to be really clear on this, Melanie, the program isn't a competition between proposals. So we're not going to take two proposals, put them beside each other, and decide which one is better than the other one. Each proposal is evaluated by the team individually, and the success is really based on the quality of the proposal and the project being proposed. The program is also first come, first serve, so timing is very critical to ensure you're able to participate if you want to. All that to say, please provide a complete high quality proposal that includes all of the information and backup details. And that's fairly key, as well as make sure that you have your backup quotes and things like that that are requested in the portal, just to make sure that you have a successful application and make it go as smooth as possible.
Great, thank you for clarifying. And we've also provided templates in the portal to ease completeness. So hopefully that's good for our proponents. Next, Blake, can you tell us what does the QA/QC take on average for each application submission?
Yeah, like Sarah said earlier, if all of the information is provided and there's no clarifications required, the team is really good. They can really turn around an application in about 5 business days. If the information isn't correct or provided in full, or maybe some clarifications are required, the application will be turned around to the participant and will require an additional 5 business days for review once received back again.
Yes, they have been very efficient so far. We've also received a question about the expectations on delivery timelines. So as a reminder, all projects must be completed within 2 years of the participant agreement execution date, or by March 31st, 2029, which is the program end date, whichever comes first. So So I hope this answered the questions. Next, we know that projects often have scope changes involved. So Blake, what is the process for handling these scope changes?
Yeah, I mean, scope changes happen. We recognize it's important to the execution of any project. Just to ensure that they're kept under control, we allow for a maximum scope change of 5% of the project cost with notification. Scope change any greater than that 5% does require a resubmission of the project.
Perfect. And now, what are some additional requirements from the federal funding? Yes, receiving a contribution from the federal funding comes with some more requirements. So one example is if you are completing your project on federal land, we will need to review your project to ensure it meets the requirements set out in the Impact Assessment Act. And if you have a project you are planning to complete on federal land, please reach out and we're happy to share additional details. Question for you, Blake. Are emissions monitoring tools or mobile units eligible for funding?
Like we said earlier, measurement and monitoring equipment like drones must be paired with a permanent methane reduction technology to be able to qualify. Mobile units on their own are generally not eligible unless that equipment remains installed at the facility alongside the methane reduction solution.
And we have a related question. So if you can expand on this one, if a technology provider has a commercially available piece of technology, but wishes to include an emerging technology into that solution for the purpose of applying to the program, would this be eligible?
That's a bit of a gray area, I would say. If the emerging portion is not TRL 8 plus, then I would probably make the assumption that this places the entire solution at a lower TRL. However, I think, that would also depend on the history of the use of the emerging tech, how it integrates into the solution, amongst other things. Just keep in mind that there must be a direct methane emission reduction attributed to any eligible technology within the program. Given the ability to apply to the program with an unlisted technology, we're very open discussing this further to see how it may or may not fit. Also happy to make an introduction to the team at NGIF if the technology appears to be below TRL 8.
Yes, we are closely in touch with the team at NGIF, so it's really complemental. So good, good. Let's discuss. Now, someone would like to know more about interest on the methane slip reduction and engine conversion. Is the interest solely due to NOx reductions or a requirement in MSAPR? What do you think, Blake?
No, I mean the methane slip from engines is really focused on just that. It's the slip of methane in the exhaust of the engine. Though it isn't a regulated item at this time, we do recognize as an industry that it is a problem that needs tackled, and that's why we have ensured that it is included in the program.
Thank you, Blake. Somebody wants to know more about registering as an eligible contractor. Do you have any other examples?
It's quite straightforward. Biggest thing to remember is you can't do any work within the scope of the program without being registered either as a participant or an eligible contractor. Participants are exactly that. They are upstream and midstream oil and gas companies, and eligible contractors is anyone else doing any sort of work. I know I've had a few of those conversations where somebody will say, well, but I'm not a contractor. And yeah, in the scope of this program, you're a contractor. It doesn't matter if you would consider yourself a contractor otherwise.
Yes, I agree. So participants apply for funding, and anyone else helping on the project and the submission is considered a contractor. Okay, now we have a few more questions here. Interesting. What kind of bottlenecks are participants experiencing in their journey of considering and succeeding with this program?
Well, before they even get into the program, let's say, just ensuring that you do have that internal budget available to cover 50% is quite important. We're also seeing, some debate on different methods of funding come into play before they even get into the program. So that's something to consider. Things like offsets are available. And as a company, you kind of have to decide on which is your best available solution. Inside of the program, when you're submitting the paperwork, I think the biggest bottlenecks is just incomplete documents. So whether that's filling out the cost guide, kind of for your eligible costs, or trying to submit for your GHG quantification, having sufficient backup, ensuring that you have all of your necessary quote documents and items like that, making sure that you have your eligible contractors registered within the program, which again is quite easy. It's a 5 to 10 minute process, doesn't cost them any money or anything like that. It's very simple. Doing all of those things is going to keep you out of a bottleneck. And like I said earlier, the team is very efficient, and we'll get through those applications as quickly as possible.
Yes, excellent. We'll work with you, but completeness makes it faster. Okay, just encouraging our attendees today. Please submit your question. It's your opportunity for us to answer it live. We have another one here. So if we have a technology that can provide quantification of methane while already mitigating the methane, but the quantification methodology does not have regulatory approval at the time of the project execution, would consideration for the potential of achieving the approval be taken into consideration? Like,
I guess that would depend on what regulatory approval you're talking about. So if we're talking about having CSA approval on, say, an electric motor or board or something like that, then you likely wouldn't be able to do that, and many participants would not put that in. However, if we're talking about, say, an approval within Directive 60 or something of that nature, then that really doesn't have an effect on the program. The big thing is that it does reduce methane, and that there is a way to prove the methane reduction.
yes, so which directive, which regulation is really important. Another one, does air fuel ratio control with catalyst installation qualify with reduced fuel consumption as a methane slip solution?
So this one's, I guess, a little bit of a loaded question, but I'm going to say yes, with the caveat that it does have to reduce methane slip in one way or another, right? So if you're there's many solutions, I guess, to methane slip. Some of them are, a full engine rebuild, or catalyst, or combination of the two. Air fuel ratio control would fit in there as well, as long as there is a provable methane slip reduction in that engine, and we want to see a good percentage. We definitely don't want to really see 1% methane slip reduction. I think the typical is somewhere between 30 and 40 on most solutions. I would say yes. So long story short, as long as you are reducing methane slip, then yeah, it should qualify. Always happy to have these conversations, though. You can always get a hold of me, and we can talk more about the technology.
Thanks, Ray. I think we'll provide our contact information really soon on the next slide. So take notes and contact us. All right. I don't see any more questions. Just waiting maybe a few seconds to see if everybody has a last minute one. Well, thank you so much, Blake, for helping me addressing these questions today. With that, our webinar is drawing to a close. We hope this was helpful to you. And again, we encourage you to visit our program website. The address is on the slide right here, where you'll find program guidelines. Our FAQ will soon be updated and other helpful resources. If you have remaining questions, please do not hesitate to reach out, methane@eralberta.ca. We're happy to follow up with you directly. We then invite you to register through our portal program and to begin your journey. And we look forward to collaborate with you soon. Thank you again and have a great day.